It's a pleasure to be able to be here today with yourselves, using our platform in a unique manner. We were approached a number of weeks ago by British Apples and Pears because unfortunately they couldn't run the conference on a conventional basis, but they still wanted to get their message out, the very important message about British apples and pears and the consumption of it. So we had a conversation with them, and what we offered to do was to host on a virtual basis the 2020 trade webinar on the Beanstalk platform. So it's a great pleasure. We'd like to introduce Ali Kappa to come on live, and so she can introduce the rest of her committee members and the rest of her panel. Ali, hello.
Hi Max, thanks very much. Thanks very much for having us today. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to welcome what is a stunning panel of excellent apple and pear growers. So I don't know whether you could all just switch on and say hello, switch on your cameras and unmute, please.
Yeah, good morning. Hello. Good afternoon. Hello.
Excellent. Everyone's in the room.
Yeah,
fantastic.
good morning. Good afternoon.
So on the panel today, we've got James Simpson from Adrian Scripps. We've got Tony Harding from Worldwide Fruit, Ross Goatham from AC Goatham and Son, and Ben Bardsley from Bardsley, England. And finally, James Smith from Loddington Farms.
Excellent. Excellent.
There's going to be three. Sorry, Max, back to you.
James, just checking, did you manage to get your secret parcel all ready for later?
Yes, I did.
Excellent. Well done. And Ali, you continue because you're just going to talk through the format briefly.
Yes, I was just going to explain to everybody that we've got some slides to share with you to bring you up to speed with where we're at and the activity that we're doing this year and the plans that we've got. But we've got three opportunities throughout this hour session to ask questions. You've got a great panel this afternoon, and I would really appreciate it if you could, at the bottom of your screen, you've got a Q&A button, Q&A, and if you want to populate that with questions for the panel, we'll have three opportunities throughout the hour for you to fire questions at us.
Well done, Ali. And just to highlight the fact that the webinars that we've been running, the more successful ones have been those that have had a lot of interaction from yourself, who've been dialing in. And after the event, we're also going to send over a PDF of the contents of the webinar, and also the webinar will be fully available on a full record basis that we will send out to you hopefully later this evening. So Ali, on that basis, are you ready to go? Shall I start the presentation off so that you can run through it and we can pull everyone else in and out as we require them?
That would be brilliant. And if the others, yeah, brilliant, they've all gone mute, that's great.
Excellent. Okay, Ali, just checking that you can see the presentation my end?
I can indeed, and if we can click through that slide to the next one, we've introduced our panel and onto the, so for today's agenda, we are going to cover three areas. Firstly, the 2020 season as we see it at the moment. We inevitably have to talk about COVID-19, and then we'd like to talk to you a little bit about the future as we see it as a board of British Apples and Pears. So moving on to the next slide, please, Max. I think the most important message that you're going to hear from us all today about the 2020 season is confidence. Despite all the challenges, and there are a few, but despite all those challenges, we have got huge confidence that we are going to be able to deliver a great British apple and pear crop this year. If I could have the next slide, Max. Some of you will have seen this before, but we are very clear in our ambition for the sector, very clear that we want to achieve 60% market share by 2030 for British apples. And just some stats there in the arrows, just to show what we've achieved in the last decade: 79% more apples grown in the UK, 224% increase in the Gala volume, and 189% increase in the Braeburn volume. And not to forget pears, there's been extensive investment in modern pear orchards. We're really proud of these statistics, and so really I think they demonstrate brilliantly our ambition for growth. And whether we are talking about the BRC audits in our pack houses, or the Red Tractor Farm Assurance, or indeed the ETI audits and the GLAA accredited labour providers, it is absolutely clear that British apple and pear growers and their pack houses are some of the safest and most compliant source of apples and pears you will find anywhere in the world. If I could have the next slide, please, Max. This is just an interesting slide here in terms of what's happening with the market overall and the retail piece. Just to say that the blue bars are the grocery market share by retailer, and then the green bar is the share of British for apples and pears that each retailer is achieving. And it's fair to say that Sainsbury's, Waitrose, and those that sit within the others bar, which is M&S, Booths, Budgeons, Aldi and Lidl, they are consistently delivering a greater percentage of British apples and pears in relation to the overall grocery market share. And we would love to see every retailer exceeding their grocery market share with their sales of British apples and pears. So to put Max on the spot now, we have our first poll. There are going to be 3 polls this afternoon where we want your input. Back over to Max now, who I believe is going to run the poll.
Okay, so let's go live with poll number 1, which we will go with. So poll number 1, how can you help us meet our strategic goals of a 60% British market share by 2030? A, you will help us meet this target. B, you can help us exceed this target. C, you will help us smash it. If you could give us your views and enter that poll, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
So, innovation. And we thought we'd start with orchard systems. And I was just going to get James, if you're free there, James, just to talk this through.
Yeah, thank you, Ali. I think one of the key things for the UK to understand is that actually we've got a very innovative and very progressive industry. So we are at the forefront of many of the growing techniques around the world. So we're looking at making our orchard systems what we're calling robot ready. But of course, they also drive efficiency for the current situation where we're working by hand. So we're trying to grow a more intensive planting with more cropping wood per hectare on a 2D system that brings the fruit closer to the trunk. So we're both improving the quality of the fruit and the efficiency of harvesting. And what we're finding through all of this is that actually the environment, ecology and efficiency all go hand in hand. So we can see that many growers are putting new orchards in with mixed species planting, not around the headlands like we may have done traditionally or on the edge of orchards or a piece of the orchard that we're not cropping, but actually right in the orchard, up and down every row. And those growers that are investing heavily in automation and improved efficiency in the orchard through, for instance, 3-row sprayers are able to do this across 2/3 of the orchard ground area. So a lot of exciting things happening, I think, there, Ali.
Thank you very much, James. And then moving on to the next slide, sticking with James Simpson, but also bringing in Ben Bardsley, who I know is doing a lot of work in this area as well. We've put up on the slide here 3 robotics options for our sector. I just thought if Ben and James wouldn't mind just talking this slide through for our audience.
Yeah, Ben, if you don't mind, I'll just make a couple of quick points and then I'm happy just to hand over to you. But they're coming back on the investment, there's 114 to 120 million pound investment in technology going into packing facilities as well as harvesting operations. And what we're seeing on the screen are 3 of the sort of forerunners, the early stages of robotic harvesting, which I know, Ben, you're looking at quite a lot of robotics at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, James, and hello everyone. I hope you're all well and staying safe. Really exciting times for the global top industry around automated harvesting. We are very much in the early days. If you look at the early days of a social network, it wasn't Facebook that came through in the end, it was other companies such as MySpace, if you can remember that. So there is going to be a lot of evolution in this space over the next 10 years. But it's not just robotic harvesting. There's a lot of other great ag tech technology coming through. We need to understand our crop better if we are to be truly autonomous as an apple grower. And to do that, you need to scout. You need to scout what's going on. You need to gather your data. And then once you've got enough data, you then need to start turning that data into information. So what's happening now within the industry is there's loads of great companies innovative companies who are coming to growers like myself, like James, like Ross, like James Smith, and saying, hey, can we work with you? Because what we want to do is get our technology to a level where we can make it commercial across the world. And of course, I think the UK market is very innovative. We have to be, because our labour situation is probably the tightest, or one of the tightest across the world, which means that we have to get across the line with robotic harvesting, and as I say, within the next 10 years. So for my business, we're investing heavily behind closed doors. We've built our own ag tech team, which I believe is one of the first businesses to do so, which is really exciting. And this is something that really kind of chimes with me. And if I was to look at 2030 and beyond, this kind of technology will be cemented very much as what we're doing.
Thanks very much, Ben. I've just turned my video off because my connection's a bit shaky. James, Simpson, can you still hear me?
Yeah, that's all good, Ali. Thank you. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, I'll turn it back on when it stops shaking.
Recap on the first poll of how can you help us meet our strategic goals of a 60% market share by 2030, and overwhelming answer B, you can help us exceed this target. So that's a great endorsement for yourself. So the second poll, do you think consumers understand the health benefits of choosing an apple a day? A, most people know about the health benefits. Oh, Ali, as you well know, 6 out of 10 kids don't know where most fresh produce comes from. So I'm not surprised that the initial results are showing such a low number. B, not enough people realise how healthy apples are. And C, we have a long way to go to ensure everyone knows how healthy apples are. So if you can participate in poll 1 and poll 2, and we'll just keep rolling those on to the end so that we can have a recap, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Q&A session, which is the next thing we've got planned.
Yes, please.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to ask my panel to unmute themselves and to take their videos off, please. And I'm just going to read the first question that's come through from Tracy Foran. I hope I've pronounced that correctly, Tracy. On labour, why is no one in the industry looking at seasonal demand of different categories and showing the resource, e.g. mushrooms as winter is high demand and you need more workers, summertime low peak, and labour could be shared to pick fruit crops. I understand different skill sets, however this could be taught to give a more sustainable yearly income for farm workers. Tracy, it's a really good question. I'm going to have a go at answering that first and then see whether any of the other panel members would like to come in. One of the difficulties when you live in a first world economy and you have to pay rent or a mortgage is that seasonal work by its nature means that you've got to follow the work around the country in order to have a year-round income. And for many people, that isn't something that they want to do. For many people, they want to live and work in one place. So that's one of the first complexities to the question that you've asked. I think the other issue there is often, particularly in mushrooms, actually, the rolls are often fairly year-round. And the peak rolls, whether we like it or not, the peak rolls really are from May through to October. If we take the 70,000 seasonal rolls in horticulture in the UK, 33,000 of those are for soft fruit and 10 to 12,000 are for apples and pears. So the big slug of it is in the hand-picked fruit that needs to be picked really gently and very delicately so it isn't bruised. I can assure you though, and I'm slightly putting on my NFU hat when I say this, the sector is the most collaborative, works really closely together. And this year, I would say, that collaboration has come to the fore. We have got labour providers and farm businesses working really closely together and supported by the government who have, for example, given a derogation on the GLAA licensing so that all farm businesses without cost this year will be able to apply for a temporary licence to ensure that they can share workers. So I think an awful lot of work has been done in that area. I don't know whether anybody on the panel would like to add anything. Nobody's jumping in. I'm going to just move down. Oh, Ross, go ahead.
All I was going to add to that was that we are working very closely with the labour providers at the moment. We're looking at using cherry harvesters and those sort of things. When they've finished in the summer, they can move over to us. There's then work in the pack houses and those sort of things up further on. So we're trying to work together to give a much longer term job rather than just the short sort of 10 or 12 week window that it normally is.
That's brilliant, Ross. And I've heard of similar initiatives going on locally to us. So yeah, no, I think I think everybody is very collaborative in the sector. I'm just looking down the questions. Guy Morton has come in with a question around whether the UK supermarkets have offered support for the 5th of October initiative. Guy, we're actually announcing this today. So in fairness to UK retailers, they weren't aware of it until today. However, I've been very pleased to see 1 or 2 retailers already coming forward last week and the week before, just to Sarah and I, asking for information about how they can support the sector. That's really pleasing at this point in the year. So I have every confidence that they will indeed come forward. I don't know, again, whether any of the rest of the panel who are talking to retailers regularly would like to come in on that point.
Can I just have a word, Ali? Because it's fascinating that when you look at a conventional supermarket, it has 35,000 different lines. And now where they're looking to go with a new reset, the new norm is that they're looking to potentially get that down to core items, especially for the short term. So presumably that's going to fall right into your apple basket, bread basket in the respect of your offering. So let's just ask this, James Simpson, do you think with this new market norm that we're seeing and with everyone working collaboratively, that actually there's going to be, from a negative of COVID-19, there's going to be a great ongoing success for your sector? James?
I would hope so, Max, and there's certainly great potential there for it. I mean, the health benefits alone would suggest that we should build some momentum behind apples and hopefully behind the British brand. And I think also there will be some rationalisation potentially of what's available for retailers and therefore what's available for consumers. But I would hope that with that rationalisation, apples can perhaps come to the fore and pears can come along with that. So, yeah, I think so. I think there could be great potential.
Well done. Tony, with your business, Worldwide Fruit, it is so well known, so well regarded. Are you able to influence this change, this new reset within the retailers so that ultimately more UK fresh produce is sold?
Well, I think when you look at the kind of Kantar last 12 weeks data, I think across the board on produce, we're seeing strong growth in all areas. And I think there's a seasonality piece that comes into play here, looking at some of the data. So certainly I would like to think as we approach the start of the UK season with plentiful volumes, high quality product, real kind of strong halo message out there around the industry. Yeah, I see no reason at all, Max, that the supermarkets will not get behind UK and keep driving it forward.
And Tony, what do you think? Do you think this is going to just be a short-term blip, or when we're hopefully sat here 3 years, 5 years down the line, we'll actually see a fundamental larger increase of UK fresh produce being consumed by UK population?
Well, I think touching on the points that the guys have made earlier, I think all the foundations are there. We've got fantastic product. We're very innovative as a group. The quality of the product we're growing is top draw. Varieties that we're producing now are really in what the customer wants. The 2 biggest varieties in terms of volume, Gala and Braeburn, they're our 2 biggest varieties as an industry as well. So we're in the right place, Max. I think it's in our hands to really to deliver that. So I think the collaborative approach across the industry is really going to help to try and do that.
Okay, James Simpson, I'm just going to come back to you, but James Smith, what's your view? Do you think this is a new beginning for British Apples and Pears within the UK?
I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think what this whole situation we have at the moment has made people think about is just about the nutritional content of their food, and they know that fresh produce is where they want to, where they're going to get all of that nutrition to help stay healthy. So I think generally speaking, as long as there's a reasonable percentage of people that carry on and supporting local fresh produce, then I think it'll make quite a big difference to the sector. But I think we are really well placed to provide nutrient-dense food for our population.
Well done. James Simpson?
Yeah, I was just going to make a point, Max, really around food security, and that as UK producers, British Apples and Pears, as growers, we've been able to step in and cover off some shortfall even this season, even with the tail end of the Northern Hemisphere season now. That's because we've got the product, and the product's of very good quality. It stores particularly well. And so we've been able to step in when I think in some circumstances, even product from Europe has been difficult to get over. So I think food security should be really a factor, home produced, home delivered and consumed at home.
And Ben, you've been very, very good in your marketing, even prior to all of this. Are you seeing an uplift in the short term, and one that you think will outlast this, hopefully, this pandemic?
We absolutely would like to see an increase in demand going forward. I mean, there's no reason why not. You know, the apple is an amazingly nutritious, relatively inexpensive, fantastic, healthy snack. Okay, and the consumer has probably gone away from us in the last few years, but now they're coming right back to us, and they're really enjoying the fantastic product. As Tony said earlier, you know, there is no one better out there who's producing, you know, the Gala, Braeburn crops that we're doing. So, you know, it's all about repeat customer. It's making sure that as English growers, we're giving our customers exactly what they want, the right quality at the right price, and they'll keep coming back. You know, long live the apple.
Well said. Ali, over to you. Someone once said to me, never waste a crisis. And we're only a third of the way through this presentation, but by what you already have got set up, you look to be in a very good place to assist the nation to fight the situation we're in.
I think we've got the perfect fruit, actually, in terms of what's happened with shopping habits. And you know, we're all being forced to just go to the supermarket once a week, and that suits apple and pear purchasing very, very well. So never one to want to take advantage of a health crisis, to be honest, but I do think apples and pears are a perfect solution for consumers looking for a healthy option to have at home, rather than what I would describe as a wrapped snack. Max, do you want to handle some of the questions that are coming in?
Absolutely. Tony, you mentioned Cantor. I think it was your good self that mentioned Cantor earlier. Very interesting question just came in. Have you the whole panel identified a particular target group amongst consumers where you think the most purchase growth will come from over the next 10 years? Is it going to be the grey pound? Is it going to be the baby boomers? Is it going to be the little kids under 6? Tony, what do you think?
Well, it's a good question, that one. I think one of the key points around the English producers, British production, is the variety of the selection of varieties that we're growing. We're growing something for everybody, really. You know, we've got sweet apples, we've got tart apples, apples for cooking, snacking apples, and I think really we should be appealing to everybody, Max. You know, it's penetration on apples at consumer level is extremely high. But when you break that down and you segment that down into the variety level, there still is a lot of opportunity to switch, you know, hopefully new customers into new varieties, different varieties. Instead of cannibalising what they would normally buy, they're buying additional apples in alongside some of their core favourites. So I think it's a broad campaign, I think, Max, and it's, you know, as touching on what Ben said, I think the key thing here is delivering reliable quality, at good value. Everybody knows the health benefits of apples, so yeah, I think it's a lot of opportunity.
And it's always the issue, isn't it, within this sector, that margin, because all of you guys aren't earning the sort of double-digit margins of an energy drink. You don't have that big bag of money to sponsor a Formula One driver or buy a football team. But it's very interesting how was earlier this week Boris Johnson stated openly that one of the reasons why he was so ill because he was so obese. And as we know, a third of all adults in the UK are obese. And if you all can do something, I sometimes get criticised for using the word disruptive. If you could get Boris Johnson, is that the right person? I'm not sure. Or a footballer or a pop star eating an apple, it's going to influence everyone to consume more of that great fresh produce. Ben, what are your thoughts? Do you think that the campaign that you've got coming up will be slightly disruptive? Will get an edge on people? Will get some of those key personalities eating apples and influencing everyone else?
Well, let's hope so. You know, we've got to make the apple cool again, haven't we? You know, we've got to make sure that we can attract big people into the industry to support us. You mentioned Boris Johnson. You know, fantastic news coming out earlier this week around what he is attributing ill health and coronavirus to people that are overweight. You know, brilliant. I think we could get him massively on board. He might be a little bit busy right now, but let's the dust settle on hopefully the coronavirus and also Brexit. I think he would be a wonderful ambassador for us moving forward. If not Boris Johnson, well, we can track somebody else. You know, we are a great industry and we do provide a great product. So it's for us to go out there, you know, and anyone who's on this webinar right now knows of anyone who can help us, then please come forward because we need every help, all the help we can get. You know, let's drive this message hard.
Ross, what do you think? You grow like everyone else some amazing fresh produce, but sometimes it could be overlooked because it doesn't have a brand, but it sells itself, especially when you bite into some of your apples for the first time. Do you think that might be the way to go to get influencers to start eating more fresh produce, to influence the Joe public to eat more fresh produce?
Well, I think if you look back at, say, the last 20 years, we've probably gone from 20% market share up to around where we are now at 40. So we've done well, but there's still a huge way to go. And I think a lot of that can be linked into the products we've got now are far superior than anything in Europe. We've got the ability now where we can store fruit around for 11 months of the year on Gala. We're looking at 12-month supply. So we need a product that can be there day in, day out, that every day the consumer goes in, they can pick that apple up and be guaranteed it's British and good quality.
Ross, well done. James Simpson, that's a very good point. That's one of the listeners has just dialed in. Do you think it's going to be more key now for the UK consumer to know where the apples and pears have come from, literally to the farm, to the field? Do you think that would be advantageous?
Yeah, I do. I don't think the industry has a problem with traceability or being proud of what we grow and what we produce. It's some of the best, if not the best apple in the world, pear in the world. Our standards are some of the highest. And I come back to that point I made earlier about food security. I think if it's grown locally, then it's got to be better for everybody.
Ali, your thoughts?
Well, and those of you who've heard me speak on this subject before, we have got a brilliant climate in this country. We've got a fabulous growing climate, and we've got plenty of water. Now, Kent might not always feel like it's got plenty of water, and actually it is for all of us. It's a bit dry right now. I can see the farmers slightly scowling at me. But compared to other parts of the world, the UK has got enough water, and it will have. All the climate change predictions suggest that we're going to be in a good place. One might argue we need better investment in water infrastructure, but we've got a brilliant climate for growing apples, and because of our climate, our apples grow and ripen more slowly, which means they taste fabulous. So absolutely, I think we've got everything as a nation that we need to grow the best apples and pears in the world.
Ali, well said. In my travels overseas, one of the biggest issues has been lack of soil fertility and lack of water. So the fact that you've got water, perhaps not on tap, but you've got availability of water and good soil, we can just conquer the labour element in the short term and ongoing. Yeah, you all look to be in a very good spot. So, Ali, would you like to keep going with the questions, or would you like to hop on back into the presentation?
Shall we hop on? There's a question, actually. Well, let's go back to the presentation, because there is a question about COVID-19 and costs and impacts, and that's actually what I'm now coming on to. So
Excellent.
for the person that's asked that question, bear with me, and if you've still got a question at the end, then you can pose it again.
And Ali and everyone, just so you're aware, they always say with live TV that you should never work with, what was it, kids and animals, and so you might say the same with chefs sometimes. But we've got the video for Raymond. It's in. We haven't tested it, but Ali, shall we move on? But just so you're aware, we've got it banked, so we can play Raymond's great video a little bit later.
Well, actually, before we go into COVID-19, let's play the video.
Okay,
if we can.
Ali, could you do me a favour, and could you just take control with everyone? And do you want to just semi-answer that COVID question whilst I just get it set up? Because it's just coming to me
of course.
Very raw. That's very
so there was a question on here about, do you think, it was from an anonymous attendee, do you think everyone is aware of the cost inflation that the new norm puts on growers and packers? And I think actually probably not. Certainly the consumer isn't going to be aware of what's coming at us. I would like to think that the retailers who have been at the forefront of this, let's face it, and done an amazing job to keep food on the shelves. I would hope that retailers understand the impact of the costs that social distancing and all the new rules bring to bear. We're going to go on and just talk in a minute after the video about some of the impacts for our sector. And I'm now seeing somebody's email screen, but hopefully.
Fantastic. So just
hello,
yes.
My name is Raymond. Hello. I would like first to thank British Apples and Pears.
Sorry, Ali, keep going. Nearly there.
So I'll come on and talk specifically about our costs. I'm just going to answer a couple of other questions then, Max.
Fire away, please.
So we've got strong customer support to buy into UK fruits and a grower base that can service the demand. Do you have government support in your market share ambitions? That's a really interesting question. Sometimes I do ask myself the question whether we have government support to grow food in the UK at all, based on some of the slightly bizarre policies that seem to be coming forward. I'm particularly concerned about where we might be going with some of the trade deals that we'll be planning to strike and what that might mean for British producers and indeed apple and pear producers, because some of the compromises that this government seems to be prepared to make could leave British producers in a very, well, we talk about an unlevel playing field situation. I very much hope that isn't the case, but I think that's a very good question. Would we have government support for something to export for a growth in GDP? Yes, of course we would. But have we really got the government's back when it comes to growing food in the UK? Sometimes I'm not so sure, and I'd love to see that change. Max,
Ali,
are we able to get that video up now, or shall I continue?
No, we're there. So no, I think I totally agree. I think with if you've got the likes of Boris Johnson stating that we've got to get this nation fitter to get over this type of situation, you're going to be in that prime spot. So let us move on to Raymond.
Hello, my name is Raymond Blanc. I would like first to thank British Apples and Pears retailers webinar to invite me amongst you and amongst all these apples. Here I'm very well surrounded. And you may wonder why on earth a Frenchman is actually promoting British produce. Well, it's very, very easy. First, I have lived in your country for 46 years, which makes me, I suppose, I hope so anyway, a bit of Frenchman. I also found through many years living with you in this wonderful country that actually there are some extraordinary fruits and everything is right. The climate is right, the varieties are excellent. I really believe the world is about to change and that environment will be the biggest driver of how we grow food, where is it being grown, which variety is being grown, and how much is being imported. If it's close to home, better taste, better texture, colors, flavors, nutrients. If it's close to home, your farm keep his farm and his craft. The village keep his little pub and its post office. And today's webinar, I know, will be a very successful one, offering lots of opportunities. Thank you very much indeed to listen to me and have a fantastic webinar. Au revoir.
Ali, that's an amazing coup to get him. You must be so proud.
I'm really pleased. He's such a charming gentleman, and I'm clearly quite passionate about what we're all doing. And as a farmer myself, you know, with a crop that's emerging now on the trees, it's so lovely to hear a chef who, at the end of the day, you know, he's at the top of his game, and he is passionate about food and drink per se. So to be so passionate about the fruit on our trees in our orchards is just, yeah, it's fantastic.
And he covers, I believe, all the demographics from the little ones all the way to the proverbial silver surface. Are you able to tell us how you're going to deploy him for the launch in October, or is that secret?
Not entirely. It's a bit like today. We were going to be in London today. We were going to be in a beautiful botanic garden talking to the trade, and COVID-19 is meaning we've got to reshape all our plans. We were looking at a live event for October the 5th. I'm just not sure. I don't think that is necessarily going to happen. So we're now looking at how we can turn that into a virtual event and perhaps use some broadcast media to help us do that. But we've got some work to do to unpick what we had got planned and reshape it all. But the most important thing is that we've got Raymond Blanc's support, and that we've got this collaboration, which I hope we will be able to go forward over the next year or two with.
And Ali, I think Ben made a really good point earlier. Don't ask, don't get. To actually put a shout out to people, whether they be in the sector or whether they be influencers or whether they be politicians or whether they be nutritionists, to get involved in this sector, because this this can save lives. It can. It might be a bit of an emotional statement, but to be able to get people to start promoting the product without you having to pay vast sums to them is going to be, again, hugely beneficial. Indeed.
I'm sorry about the barking dog in the background. I'm just wondering if we should now move on to the next slide about COVID-19 impacts, because I think we need to share this with everybody. The sector's been putting some real thought into what's going to happen in terms of COVID-19 and our response. We've already talked about the recruitment campaign, but let's talk about the wider impact on the industry and how we've had to adapt, because like retail, actually we've been selling apples into retail out of our pack houses and our stores since the very start of this pandemic. If I can move on to the next slide, Max. The impacts are quite far and wide, quite wide-ranging. We have obviously been faced with, for many of us, we'd already recruited, and now we've got to re-recruit, and with that comes cost. I have direct experience myself of having recruited some British workers because our Eastern European workforce couldn't get here due to the international travel disruption, and with that comes training, and then as some leave and you need to recruit new people, then retraining. So I think we do face a year of training and retraining. There's a huge amount of administration around all this extra recruitment, and the level of applications is much higher than we're used to having to deal with. But then what happens is we find that there's quite a drop-off between application and interview. People don't necessarily want to commit to term, or they have other reasons why actually when they find out about the job's concerned, they're not able to step forward to interview and actually accepting the job. So there's quite a lot of administration that's being created in our businesses around that. Of course, what we don't know as apple and pear growers is what level of attrition that we're going to get. And I don't think we'll really get a handle on that until we're in the middle of picking. And obviously, if you get a high level of turnover in your staff in the middle of picking, that can be very disruptive and it can add a lot of cost. That said, there is also, of course, all of the social distancing measures that we're going to have to put into place. So on all of our farm businesses, a lot of thought has gone into, as there is a changeover of staff between machinery, how we need to deep clean and keep things sanitised, the work that needs to be done in terms of thinking about how people park, how they come into work every day, how they're trained, all of those things are being considered. And in our pack houses, we're having to think about, can we socially distance our staff? And if we can't, what do we do? And everybody's following the guidance, and that includes the use of PPE, and many growers have been very innovative and introduced perspex screens to keep people safe, and also visors. There are also quite a lot of pack houses who are now running a 2-team system and introducing a deep clean between those systems. And on this slide, we've got just a good example of what those perspex screens look like. And you can see there that where we can't create some distance between the workers, we can put more protection in. So all sorts of different things that we're having to think about. And there's been a lot of headlines around quarantining of overseas workers. Together with the NFU, we've been lobbying government to make sure that if the workers come in as a separate cohort and that they can be accommodated as a separate cohort and also go to work as a separate cohort, that they'll be able to arrive and work from the first day in the UK. We don't have that announcement yet. We are hoping to hear from the government this week on whether or not we've been successful with that lobby. So we're going to move back to some questions and answers now, Max. If we could go to the next slide, please. And Max, I'm going to hand back to you on the Q&A.
Thank you. Everyone else, could you join in, please? So a lot of businesses we know have been adversely affected by the labour issues. Ross, how have you got on?
So far to date, at the moment, with the pack house side of it, we've been pretty good. We employ 98% direct employees. So we've had the same crew from September right through till now. So the packing side's been fairly okay. Looking forward to thinning, we are seeing good numbers of applicants coming through. It's just that question at the moment of when they arrive, are they able to start work, or are we going to have to keep them somewhere separate? We've got campsites at the moment that we use regularly that we're keeping as potential quarantine sites so that we can keep them away from our current workers. There's just so many balls up in the air at the moment, you don't really know which one to catch first.
Well said. Tony, interesting one. Minimum wage. There is a view within the fresh produce sector that in the short term, even pre all this, that the minimum wage is going to have to hit £10 an hour to attract people. What's your view? Do you think we actually need to pay more to attract more people in?
I think that's a real that is a prospect, Max. Yes, I would agree with that. I think it is a supply and demand position. We're not just competing in our own marketplace here in the UK. It's also, the whole of the produce industry is competing against itself from a European perspective as well. So, we've got to be competitive in rates of pay and to attract the people here. But it's not just about pay, Max. It's also about what else you can give the workers. And I think, Ross just touched on it earlier. I think the returnee rate in top fruit in particular is extremely high. We've been blessed and as an industry really in having high returnee levels. And that's no fluke. That's about the investment that's being made at farm level by the producers in terms of the systems and the welfare and the accommodation, the amenities and the services that they're providing to their workers. So, it's a complete package, Max. It's not one without the other, as I see it.
No, well said, Tony. And James Simpson, your experiences in your particular pack houses, the measures that you presumably have put in, are they? How do you plan? Are they going to be permanent, or are they just for the short term? And how are you and your staff getting around them?
Yeah, well, we always look for the positives out of these sort of situations, Max. And one of the things that is coming to the fore is actually there are, in some ways, better ways of working. So introducing a one-way system for the flow of people around the pack house just to get from the mess room, toilet, hand wash facilities actually is much more beneficial than the old contraflow system we have had. The screening, the photograph you saw there is just one of the screening implementations that we've made. Actually, that's working very well for us to increase productivity, or I dare say it really, but actually cutting down on a little bit of the socialising in the pack house, which means the productivity's gone up. So yeah, I think there are some positives. I think we will be keeping in place some of the measures we've introduced through this. And like everybody, yeah, finding labour is a challenge, but I think it's in part related to COVID and the government and policy. But actually, we've seen a long-term trend in a decline in the availability of labour, both from within the UK, but particularly from within the UK. If we go back 15, 20 years, which we don't often think about, I would say that 80% of our fruit picking labour was UK or student, people on holiday from work. If we look at it now, 80% then, if it's 8% now, I think somebody's doing incredibly well to have 8% UK labour in a picking gang.
Well done, James. And Ben, how do you find new recruits from the UK compared to experienced workers or workers from overseas? Do their productivity levels, do they compare, or is it completely different?
I think Tony touched on it a second ago. These guys come back year after year, and returnees are highly skilled individuals who really understand how to do a harvesting job. To pick apples and pears is not just a 5-minute learning job and you can do it. You've got to hone your skills. So those people that have come back year after year are much better placed to come in, hit the ground running, and importantly for them, earn a lot of money per day. That's all they're here to do, is earn a lot of money. And we massively encourage that perspective. The UK workforce, we are seeing that they haven't potentially got the right mindset as to what's in front of them. This is very general, by the way. This is not specific in any way. But when people are applying to us from the UK workforce, we've got a pretty strict criteria of points they have to pass for us to then consider them for an interview to get the job. And that is around, are you prepared to work long hours? Are you prepared to work in all weather conditions? And are you prepared to stick it out for more than 8 weeks? I think that's a really important part, because I talk about honing skills. It takes time, and we want our workforce to get better and better and better, so that by the time we get to the big harvest, which is the gala crop harvest, which happens in October, we've got a very highly skilled team of harvesters who go through and can harvest effectively and efficiently.
Ben, well done. James Smith, if you read the Daily Mail says that none of this year's harvest is going to be picked because there's no one out there willing to pick, or they haven't got the ability to. Do you think this harvest for 2020 is going to be picked? Yes or no?
Yes.
And why are you so confident?
I don't read the Daily Mail for a start, so I wouldn't be sure quite what they're getting at. But I think, there are definitely going to be challenges. And as some of the other panelists have said, the key challenge in most farming, and especially in fresh produce, is just getting the right job done at the right time. So the challenge is going to be around those pinch points. So those of us that grow a high percentage of gala, about just getting the job done and getting it done well. The better we can get it done, the better our offer to the consumer. I think there are going to be challenges around getting labour in. I don't object to people of any nationality really turning up on farm and being prepared to do a good job. I've got a guy who's normally an estate agent that is currently working for me as a tractor driver, doing a great job. So I think, the doors are open. As Ben says, we as employers have to take this seriously, that we can't just have people turning up and thinking it's the darling buds of May and they can have a wonderful time while swanning around on an English farm. It is hard work, and these are, we're all now running, professional businesses. So the recruitment is serious, and there just seems to be this sort of presumption that UK farming is just sitting there waiting for any old person to turn up and do some work, and it's simply not the case.
Well said. Ali, you've been well documented, as I think you mentioned earlier, about the very high retention rate of British pickers, British staff that you've had in. Is that still the same a couple of weeks after you've made various comments to the press?
It is actually.
Brilliant.
Mainly because the normal work or studies that they'd be doing just isn't there. That the university students we've got cannot go back to university. And the only worker that we've lost actually has had to go home and self-isolate because a member of his family has come down with COVID-19. So yes, but I think there will be concerns in the industry about as people start to go back to work. But there are plenty of applications coming through. And I think the energy that we're seeing as a sector in pickforbritain.org.uk, in the reallocation of budget that British Apples and Pears has done into our own jobs portal, there is a huge determination that this crop is going to get picked this year.
Fantastic. And we mustn't avoid one question that's come in a couple of times. Packaging. The sustainable packaging seems to have taken a back burner due to COVID-19. Are suppliers still working towards meeting the deadline requirements of the different retailers? A great question from John Harrington. Ross, can I throw you that hospital pass and see what you think, please?
Yes, of course you can, Max. I would say we haven't lost sight of looking at sustainable packaging since the start of the crisis. What I think the crisis has shown us is that actually the consumer still wants to buy product that is pre-packed, because definitely during the last 8 weeks, sales of loose or unwrapped items have definitely declined significantly. So there is still a perception from the consumer that something that is wrapped and packed is a lot safer product. What we as an industry need to do is look for those solutions that are kind to the environment. We've gone through probably 10 or 12 different types now, looking to try and find that works, that is the most efficient. And if you look at plastic as a whole, it's probably less damaging for the environment to have a bit of plastic around some apples that are packed and grown in the UK than it is to import fruit from New Zealand or South America, for example.
Boom.
So we have to weigh up the pros and cons of everything.
Yeah. Tony, your views?
Yeah, just echoing what Ross says there. I think the whole COVID thing for us as an industry, we're an essential industry, so or okay, things may look a bit different in the pack house, but it's still business as normal. You know, it's just kept going. If anything, it's been stronger. So a lot of the work patterns that see in the background in what we do as well have kept going. So that you know, we're like Ross really, we're still focused on trying to find more sustainable alternatives for packaging. The demand for loose has certainly fallen off a cliff since COVID. That's for sure. So yeah, where it'll all go, but I don't see this going away. You know, this isn't something that I think retailers will take their foot off the gas. There will be a refocus, I think, once we get into the new norm, and I think we're nearly there now. So yeah, I see there's a lot of work already gone in the background with manufacturers on this. They're all striving to find the kind of the silver bullet solution, really. So, and it's probably not a million miles away. So yeah, I think it's an area we'll keep progressing.
Tony, well done. And a great comment just in from an anonymous attendee. As growers, would you endorse full digital traceability on British apples, making British apples the most transparent in the world? Would this lift the brand to the top? We've said it before about 6 out of 10 kids don't know where fresh produce comes from. What a great thing to be able to pick up a pack of apples or a label on an apple and with a smartphone do the QR code and get a picture of Ross or James or Tony or James or Ben or Ali and perhaps see a video of your farm. I'm sure that is all capable. Ali, we are galloping away and doing very well. Do you want to get back into the presentation, just looking at the times?
Yes. Brilliant. So just the final section, really, to talk about the next slide, please, Max, to talk about the future. And we are determined to go forward with a really exciting future. And the next slide, please, Max. You won't be surprised to hear us say that we intend to continue putting an apple a day at the front and centre of what we're doing. Obviously, labour continues to be, as you've heard from the Q&A session, probably one of our main concerns. And we are very keen to ensure that we continue to bring labour, our amazing, loyal European labour, that we continue to work with the government on the expansion of the seasonal workers scheme. But there is a real commitment, and I think you've heard it from the board and our panellists today, around recruiting British workers for this season and beyond. So there's lots of exciting stuff going on. I think where I'd like to just bring the focus now is to how we can get the in-store presence to focus on British apples and pears this season. And what we really want to do is to see the new season fruit on display and widely available from the beginning of October, that date again, the 5th of October 2020. And what we'd like to see is island support, strong British origin, both in the store but also online. In some cases, it's quite hard to make that choice for British online, and we would definitely like to see retailers supporting origin choice in an online as well as in the store environment. We would like to talk to retailers about the opportunities to do in and out of store sampling. We think every retailer should be sampling fresh British apples when they've just come into store. There is nothing better, there's nothing tastier, nothing crispier, crunchier. So we would really encourage British retailers to think about in-store and out-of-store sampling. And of course, I think every retailer can get behind us in terms of the social media plans that we're putting forward. And when we are clearer on our campaign launch activity, we will share that with retailers, and it would be great to see every retailer getting behind our activity on their social media platforms. We are determined to be able to not only pick the crop, but to supply 2020 apples and pears for a full 12 months, all the way through into next year. So Max, without further ado, I think we're going to move to our third and final poll, and it'll be really interesting to see the results for this one. Shall I pick that up, Max?
It's okay, I've got it.
Great.
And so just seeing how the other polls are doing, and so slightly as expected. And 3, what would you do to deliver the biggest impact on British apple and pear sales this year? A, in-store sampling. B, Union Jacks. C, aisle end displays. And D, clear British Origin online. We'd love to have your vote on that. And just to confirm, when we get all the votes in and when we positively wrap up the webinar, we'll put the poll results on the send out that we'll send out a little bit later this evening or early tomorrow morning. So if you could vote now, that would be fantastic.
Brilliant, Max. And if I could just have the last slide before we want to do any final Q&A. So, and that's it, that's brilliant. And so just to summarise from today then, we continue to have a big ambition to grab 60% market share for British apples on UK supermarket shelves. There is a real investment by growers and packers in the future, and that investment is in the innovation that will enable us to robotically pick, that will enable us to become more and more efficient in our pack houses. So that investment in innovation is where we see our future. And COVID-19, yes, it has brought us challenges, but I think as usual with growers, with farmers, with our pack houses, we're a resilient bunch and we're very solution orientated. And I think we've already found many of the solutions to get ahead of this year's problems that we've been thrown. And that's a good place to be at this point in the season. I think finally, I just want to leave everybody with that date again, Monday, the 5th of October. And we're really, really excited about this season, despite all the challenges. And we want every retailer to be as excited and to smash those market share figures this year. So if I could leave the retailers with one challenge this year, is please smash your market share figures on British apples and pears. So that's it from me. I don't know, Max, whether you feel we've got time to go back for more questions and answers. I'm back in your hands.
I think, Ali, definitely we need some more Q&As because we're getting a lot of questions in. Can everyone join back in? So gentlemen, Ali, do you think it's actually obtainable, this amazing target that you set yourselves for 2030? James, Simpson.
I think it's a real challenge, Max, but there's no point in doing something unless it is a real challenge, to be fair. And I think, yes, it's achievable, but it will need retailers to get behind British apples and pears. I mean, we as an industry are prepared to get behind our product. We're investing heavily in our orchards, in our infrastructure, in our labour, in our ag tech, in everything. And we're prepared also to invest in the marketing. That's what British Apples and Pears are doing. We're more brand orientated. We want to put British Apples and Pears to the fore. And to actually absolutely grow that share, then really the retailers need to get behind us as well. And we're prepared to work with them, developing sustainable longer term relationships that should deliver for everybody.
Thank you. Tony, with Worldwide Fruit, you have a very close relationship with a number of retailers. Do you think it's possible for you to achieve these targets under the British Apple and Pear umbrella?
Yeah, I do, Max. I think, coupled to the investment growers are making around long-term storage with DCA, we can take our seasons longer, so we don't need to rush in the Southern Hemisphere fruit as quick as we used to. I think there'll be a number of people still selling English Gala in June and July this year, and the quality is still very strong. I think as well, it comes back to that as a category, as I said earlier, penetration is already higher, but how can we improve that weight of purchase, that every time someone comes in and instead of buying what they currently buy, how do we get them to buy more? And that's that trying to pick up a diversity of variety when they're purchasing as well. So yeah, it's all there to be done, Max. I think varieties like Pink Lady, which are growing and becoming, quite well, very strong in our marketplace. Second strongest variety in terms of value in the UK, third in volume. So we know we have some challenges there around the seasonality and harvest time of that, but there is work underway in the UK with some commercial trials, looking at the feasibility of trying to grow a Pink Lady in the UK to try and fly the British flag for a very strong brand as well. So I think loads to go at, Max, and definitely achievable.
Well done, fantastic, Tony. Thank you, James Smith. Do you think there's enough consumer upside? Do you think they'll be able to consume this amount of produce that you're potentially all going to be growing?
Yeah, I think it's all about just having a consistent offer year round. I think Ross touched on that earlier on. The right varieties grown in the right way, stored properly. I think there's always going to be imported fruit, to supplement and to keep the shelves full all year round. But yeah, I think all it needs really is just for the consumers to be looking for British and get used to finding British. I think all too often I get sort of calls and comments from people that they can't find British produce, or certainly British apples and pears, on the shelves. So as James Simpson has mentioned, if the retailers get behind us and we can build a coherent plan between the industry and the retailers, then I don't see any barriers to it really. I think we as growers can deliver, and I think the consumers just need to get used to seeing British on the shelves.
Fantastic. Well done, James. A question for both Ross and Ben. Both of your businesses are expanding, and you're very open with that expansion and your tree planting and how you're progressing. It feels like you're going to have to go again. It feels like you're going to have to expand again if this market's coming towards you. Are both of you prepared for that?
Shall I start, Ross? I think I'll go first. From my perspective, Max, it never stops. We're only building on our current situation. When we get to 60%, we'll then look to go to 70%. But it's not necessarily 70% of our home market. We also want to look at markets abroad to sell the larger apples, because the UK consumer is very, very keen on a smaller apple, which is great. As growers, we work very hard to make sure we grow a large percentage of smaller apples. However, no grower in the country cannot produce some larger apples. So it's about understanding what else exists beyond the island, and grow our market share potentially across the world, supporting our UK retailers, because they would welcome that, to make sure that we can sell the whole bin, to maximise returns, to make sure that we as UK growers are highly profitable. Now, if you go across the world, there's some wonderful growers who are making seriously good margins that we could only ever dream of in the UK. So they are then reinvesting year after year, driving innovation, driving the orchard investments, driving the tech investments around automated picking. And we as UK growers have to get into the same ballpark as them if we want to compete. It's a simple equation. UK growers have to be profitable to make this industry a long-term success.
Ross, views, please.
I think from my point of view, echoing some of what Ben's just said, we took our first tentative steps this year with export to Qatar, which worked very, very well. We need to open up a global market, because at the moment in the UK, we only have our own market. All of our competitors globally have markets around the world, and we all know that a bin of fruit doesn't fit on a British supermarket shelf perfectly. So we have to look at the avenues where we can sell the fruit correctly. The other thing we need to look at is, as James Smith was saying, we need closer contact with the supermarkets. There's a number of supermarkets that are still looking at sort of end of May, early June as being their switchover dates to Southern Hemisphere fruit. That's leaving June, July and August, so a quarter of the year, without British fruit on their shelves. That's something we've got to stop, and we've got to be able to convince them with the quality that we're growing. I mean, for us and my company, we've been serving Gala for 11 months of the year for the last 2 years, right round into August. So the technology is there, the ability is there. All we've got to do is plant more apples. We simply haven't got enough at the moment. With a 40% market share at the moment, there's a huge growth potential there, but we've all got to have the faith to plant more.
And so to everyone, do you think, really good point by Ross, do you think that is that's the key point, to get the retailers and other customers, whether it be food service or direct consumers, to be influenced more to fill these gaps in the shoulder of the UK domestic market? What do you all think? Please pile in.
Yeah, I think, Max, we've got to have the confidence that our customer base really wants to support what we're doing. We have great confidence in our product as growers, and I think you've seen today that actually we can deliver. 11 months of the year on English Gala is fantastic. The quality of the product that we put on the shelf is fantastic. So I think what we've got to do is just drive that volume. Coming back on the export thing, we're not expecting the UK market to absorb absolutely everything that we produce. We are savvy, we are professional businesses, we know what's out there. We've exported somewhere around 50 containers this year to the Middle East, and that's been a valuable part of our business and our move forward. But our core market, our best market, is absolutely here in the UK, and I think as a grower base we can drive that forward.
James, well done. Ali, we've learned so much from this 2020 trades webinar with yourselves. Although you've led most of this, I've definitely learned more than I did at the beginning of it. What have you learned? What do you think the audience has learned that they perhaps didn't know before this webinar?
I think we've all got a new way of working. I hope, and I'm really keen to hear from our audience as to whether this has worked for them. Really keen to understand whether they've got what they wanted out of it. I'm conscious that there are still questions we haven't answered on screen. I'm typing away trying to answer some of them. But I think this is a new way of working, and it's a new way of us all connecting really easily with the trade and with a wider trade audience. So I hope we're going to get lots of feedback. I hope it's a two-way process.
Ali, well done. So I'm just going to ask every one of you one question, just to wrap up from your own perspective before we close the session down. This sector that we're in, the market seems to be coming towards you, but what do you need to create success for your business and for British Apples and Pears for the short, the medium and the long term? How do we create success? James Simpson.
I think we just have to get behind the brand, in all honesty, Max. I think it's not just about the growers believing, it's about everybody believing. And if that means more work on our part to get our message across, then I think we as an industry are prepared to do that. We need the retailer to believe and the consumer to believe. And from my experience, if you put our product in front of the consumer, they believe.
Boom. Tony, how can you create success for Worldwide Fruit and for British Apples and Pears ongoing?
Yeah, I think I agree with what James just said there. I think if we can get that strong brand, give it that consistency of the quality, the availability piece, being on the shelf as often as we can, I think that's the way we've got to drive it. We deal with retailers who we do have quite a turnaround sometimes on buyers. So actually, the constant needs to be the product and how we really win with the product. So for me, that's the key area that we've got to drive and get on the front foot with all the positive stories that we've got going on as an industry, because as you heard today, there's loads of them.
Tony, well done. James Smith, how do we create success for you and the British Apples and Pears Group?
I think we've got to keep pushing on with innovation on farms, and we've got to do everything we can to really unlock the genetic potential of the crops that we're growing. I think massive drive on health and nutrition needs to come off the back of this. So I think, the UK top fruit industry historically had a bit of a poor reputation against some fairly uniform and consistent imported fruit, but we've cracked that. So we've cracked the quality angle, and I think we've got to just keep driving on with that. Keep offering a consistent, high quality product, and as James says, get the consumers hooked in and committed to buying British.
James, well done. Ross.
I think we've got a perfect opportunity at the moment to engage with government, especially in education, because of COVID and everything we're going through. On people's mind is where their food's coming from, where it's sourced, where it's grown. Surely we've got an opportunity to try and re-engage with the younger population and actually teach them where their food's coming from and make them actually care about it rather than just caring what's cheap.
Well done, Ross. I think you deserve a boom for that. Ben.
Finally, from me, just really, obviously, I 100% agree with what everyone else said. Repeat purchase is going to be vitally important, quality. But personally, for me, it's innovation. We've got to be at the forefront of top fruit innovation globally to make sure that we are pioneering technology to produce the highest quality product at the least possible price. I'm very excited by the space we're starting to operate in. And I think there's loads of really great stuff that's being done by not only the growers that sit on this webinar right now, but also across the industry. So yeah, excited. The future is very exciting, Max.
Ben, well done. Ali, your views, please, to wrap up.
I think it's really simple. If we get every consumer in the UK eating an apple a day, I think we will have absolutely cracked it.
Excellent, Ali, well done. And let's just have a quick look at the polls, which we'll show you on the PDF a little bit later. Really interesting results on the market strategy that you all look like you're going to assist. Do the consumers understand the health benefits of an apple? not enough. So there's a whole, it goes back to what Ross was saying, a huge educational piece there, and split views on how do we deliver the biggest impact on British apple and pear sales. Our end displays have it at the moment, but let's see what that says as we wrap up. And we just need to say some thank yous. There's a lady in the background who's been instrumental in setting this all up and getting us all together. Sarah, would you be able to come live on your video and your audio, please?
Hi Max, hello everybody.
And Sarah, just quickly describe to everyone who you are, just in case people aren't fully aware of your role within British Apples and Pears, please.
So I'm Operations Director for British Apples and Pears. I work very closely with Ali and the board, just to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing and that everything keeps moving with the programme.
Well done. And you're not going to avoid this question either. How can we collectively create success for this sector?
I think it comes down to the very simple, it's an apple a day. If we can embed that in the eating habits of the nation, it's a really great snack. It can go everywhere with you. It's low calorie. It's a great substitute for all that junk that we're sitting eating at our desks at home because we can't go anywhere. So an apple a day, everybody, thank you. So
everyone, would you agree with me that if we all persuaded the retailers to sell more British apples and pears and the consumers to buy more British apples and pears, we'll be a far healthier nation? Put your hands up in the air if you agree with me. And the one thing I think we're sometimes very bad at is actually showing off our own produce. James, have you got any of your produce, please?
Yeah, we've at this time of the year, actually my favourite apple is probably British Braeburn. It's the best Braeburn out there, but this is actually Red Prince, which out of the fridge and chilled is fantastic.
Fantastic. James, keep it up there, please. Let's see it. Keep it up. Tony, what have you got to show off, please?
I've actually got a Smith apple, and this is a relatively new variety in the UK for me. Flavour, even at this time of year, is still a standout for me.
Okay, Tony, keep it up there, please. Ross, why do I know you're going to show off and you're going to have 2 or 3 or 4?
I'm going to have I've got Gala. I've ate the others while we've been talking.
Fantastic. Well done. Keep it up, Ben.
I've got a beautiful British Cameo and also British Braeburn as well. So 2 fantastic varieties.
Excellent. James, what have you got, please?
This is a Magic Star. This is another new variety. Really good to eat. Stores incredibly well. Going to be a big part of the future, I think.
Fantastic. Sarah?
British Braeburn.
Excellent. And Ali, last but not least, what have you got there, please?
I've got a British Jazz, courtesy of Robert Hinge. Thank you, Robert.
Excellent.
Glad you said that, Ali.
And I've got a Jazz as well. So come on, guys, let's all have a bite and show off our amazing fresh produce. Well done, everyone. We've had everything. We've had barking dogs. We've had chefs in and out. We've had a great team of experts. I think it's been an absolute success. We'll send you the PDF with the wrap-up a little bit later. One and all experts, thank you very, very much. An apple a day. Well done, everyone.
Well done, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.